Subscribe this channel and hit the bell icon. Thank you very much.
All my dear students, Hseb Suraj once again in front of you to help. Today I'm going to tell you about a famous fairy tale from class 12, which is Hansel and Gretel. The writers of this story are Jacob and Wilhelm Grimm. We can also call them Grimm brothers. This story is quite simple, but it has varieties of meanings. This story suggests us various meanings, for example, socio-cultural meaning, symbolic meaning, political meaning, psychological meaning, etc. This story deals with the life of a poor woodcutter and his two kids, Hansel and Gretel, and their struggles and hardships for their survival. This story begins with the description of a poor woodcutter's family. According to this story, long time ago, a poor woodcutter's family lived in the village just beside a dense forest. The woodcutter earned his livelihood through cutting woods in that jungle and selling in the town nearby. There were altogether 4 members in that family. Due to the poverty, it was quite difficult for the woodcutter to run his family in a proper way. The woodcutter had a second wife and 2 kids. His kids were Hansel, elder son, and Gretel, younger daughter. The woodcutter and his wife are unnamed here in this story. Woodcutter's wife wasn't good home. She was quite rude by her nature. She showed her rude behavior to the kids, being a stepmother. Once there was famine in that village. Woodcutter became quite tense due to the lack of food items in the house. He became quite sad, thinking much about the possible ways to run his family in a proper way. Later in the evening time, when Woodcutter asked his wife about that problem, his wife advised him to leave the kids in the dense forest so that they could feel easy and even survive properly. Woodcutter did not like that idea, but his wife forced him to do so. Finally, Woodcutter agreed. Due to the hunger, the children were awake late night. They heard the plan of their parents clearly. After hearing the plan of their parents, Gretel started crying, being sad. Hansel assured her to find some solutions. Hansel made her comfort and quiet. Hansel went out quietly and collected some shiny pebbles into his pockets and went to bed again. Next early morning, the parents took the kids to the jungle, pretending to search woods. While moving towards the jungle, Hansel kept on pausing himself and turning back time and again. Actually, he was dropping pebbles on the way so that they could easily get the way back to home. When his father asked him the reason behind turning back, very cleverly Hansel replied his father that he was saying bye-bye to a little cat on the roof of his house. After reaching the middle part of the jungle, the parents lit on the fire and even provided them pieces of bread. The stepmother asked them to wait until their arrival. The parents returned to their home after deserting the kids in the jungle. The kids waited for their parents for a long time, but later on they ate bread and slept there due to tiredness. When they woke up, the night was about to fall. Again, Gretel started crying. Hansel comforted her and asked her to wait for the moon to appear in the sky. When moon shone in the sky, the pebbles which Hansel had dropped on the way started shining. Following those shining pebbles, Hansel and Gretel arrived home early in the morning. They worked a lot whole night. The woodcutter became quite happy to get his kids back to home. But the stepmother became quite upset and angry. Now, I would like to present you some important questions and their answers which will help you in your examination. Time passed by. Again, there occurred a famine in that village. The woodcutter became quite sad about that problem. When he asked his wife about that problem, again she made her wicked plan of deserting the kids in the jungle. This time Hansel didn't get a chance to collect pebbles from outside because the door was locked from outside by their stepmother. Hansel comforted his sister by saying that God will help them. Hansel even didn't get a chance to collect pebbles in the morning time because their stepmother woke them up quite early and even provided them pieces of bread. Hansel took bread of Gretel too. While moving towards the jungle, Hansel did the same act as before. He kept on pausing himself and turning back time and again. This time he dropped breadcrumbs on the way. When his father asked him the reason behind turning back, he replied his father that he was saying goodbye to a little dove on the roof of his house. This time Hansel and Gretel were taken to the deepest part of the jungle. The parents made the same promise after lighting up the fire. Both of them knew very well that the parents were lying. Hansel comforted his sister by showing the hope of the moon to appear in the sky. But this time they could not find their proper way back to home because birds had eaten up all the breadcrumbs which Hansel had dropped on the way during the daytime. They wandered here and there in the forest for a long time and finally got lost. They were unable to find their proper way back to home. They got lost in the forest for 3 days. While they were sitting under a big tree, they saw a beautiful white bird that sang quite melodious song. They followed that bird continuously. That bird sat on the roof of an amazing little house that was made of bread and sugar. Hansel and Gretel became quite happy to find such a house. They started eating that house being happy. At the meantime, an old woman came out of the house crying, "Who is eating my little house?" Both of them replied her clearly that wind was eating her little house. Hansel and Gretel became quite afraid at first, but later on they became quite happy to find kind behavior of the old woman. That old woman welcomed them inside her house. She served them quite delicious food items to eat and even provided them fine beds to sleep. Hansel and Gretel felt it as heavenly pleasure. That old woman wasn't really kind as well as good woman. Actually, that old woman was wicked witch who liked to eat children's meat. Next day, she showed her real behavior to the kids. She made Gretel work hard in various household tasks and locked Hansel inside the cage to fatten him. Actually, Hansel was quite thin boy. That's why she locked him. She didn't like to eat bony meat. Now, I would like to present you some important questions and their answers which will help you in your examination. That wicked witch compelled Gretel much in various kinds of household tasks. She even provided good food items to Hansel to make him fat. She checked Hansel's finger time and again to confirm whether he became fat or not. But Hansel deceived her by showing a piece of bone instead of his finger. Finally, that wicked witch got impatient. She planned to kill Hansel. She ordered Gretel to check the oven whether it was hot or not. Very tactfully, Gretel replied her that she did not know how to check the oven. Being angry, the wicked witch moved ahead to show her the way of checking the oven. At the meantime, Gretel gave her a hard push. The wicked witch fell inside the oven and Gretel locked that oven from outside. Gretel released her brothers, saying that we are really saved. That wicked witch is dead. After killing that witch, they searched the whole house of the witch. They found lots of jewels, pearls inside the house. They filled their pockets with jewels and finally set out for their home. They searched their way back to home again a lot. After some time, they heard the sound of surging water. When they got there, they found a big river with expanse of water in it without having any bridge or boat. Luckily, they saw a large white duck. Both of them requested that duck to take them across the river. Gretel even sang a melodious stanza to make a deep request to that duck. Finally, that duck took them across the river one after another. After crossing the river, they easily got their way back to home. After reaching their home, they discovered that their stepmother had died. The woodcutter became quite happy to see his kids once again. Both of them provided him a lot of jewels, which they had taken from the witch's house. They lived very happily thereafter. Now, I would like to present you some important questions and their answers which will help you in your examination. So this is all in all about this famous fairy tale Hansel and Gretel by Jacob and Wilhelm Grimm. Thank you for watching this video. We'll meet again in my next video. Until then, bye bye, take care, and don't forget to subscribe and like my videos. Thank you very much.